Hi, Jessica. How you doing? All right, I've got your work up here. Thank you so much for kicking things off. That, of course, is not always the easiest thing to do, so I appreciate that. Wanted to keep it simple and straightforward. Of course, that's very smart for business card design. Chose this color palette to show friendliness. Kept the font cute but nice. I'll talk about font and color in 1 second. And you decided not to add an image. And again, that points to simplicity and minimalism. And that's always good decisions for any business card design. So let's jump right over to the business card. Now, the first thing I notice is that you have the front on one page and the back on the other. If you jump over to the assignment setup, you'll see that this has you set this up as a spread so we can see the front and the back at the same time. Now, it's up to you. If you don't want to set this up as a spread, if you're working on these individual files, just go ahead and do that. But when you do submit it, compile the two files into a single page PDF so that we can look at the front and the back at the same time instead of having to jump back and forth like this. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right into things here. So the first thing I see is that we have basically what is called, let me see, I'm going to bring this up a little. Oops. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the front. Now, the first thing I see is it's an interesting setup. I think it's very interesting. One thing I want you to do is I want you to print this out in black and white. And definitely use your fast settings because you don't want to you do a quick draft, set it to black and white so you don't suck up all your ink. But you want to print the front and the back so you can get a good idea of how this type looks. Business cards are pretty small. It's always deceiving laying out a business card on screen because it looks so much bigger than it actually is. I mean, business cards are tiny, right? So you want to make sure that this reads well. The first thing I see here is the fact that you're using reversed type. Now, reverse type means simply that you're using a light colored type on a dark colored background. Traditionally, we use dark colored type on a white colored background. Reversing type adds a couple of things, a couple of conditions that we just really need to keep in mind. One of those conditions is how closely these letters are next to each other, the space between letters, which is called kerning. And whenever you reverse type, especially with a serif typeface, you want to increase the kerning or the tracking associated with this. So you want more spaces. You want to space this out a little bit more. Not so much that it creates unusual spacing, but I would just go select the whole thing, go to your tracking and increase it by a couple of points here and here. And that's going to open up the space between letters and allow this reverse type to be much more readable, much more legible in a wider variety of circumstances and situations. Right now, and then also right here, these are pretty tight. Not as tight as these, but these could also be loosened up a little bit. And the relevance there is that as we get from a distance to a distance, and business cards are typically looked at from arm's length, so we can see the letters are starting to run together a little bit. So we don't want to impede the readability, legibility of that type associated with the card. To me, it looks like you've used the cap letters for the first initial of your name is part of this typeface. And that's okay, that's interesting, but it creates this kind of JV right here. And I think that JV, since it's not used anywhere else, to me it's establishing something that's not being used somewhere else. For that reason, I recommend using the V and the J associated with this typeface instead of swapping them out. And that is something I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. I don't think the capital J and the cap V, the uppercase J and uppercase V, are serif in this sans serif typeface. So I would go ahead and set those. You can increase the size of the caps like you have here, but I do recommend using the same typeface. Okay, that brings us to, and you can see right here, you'll see how I see that space right there. There's a big space right there, so I would move that I back in there a little bit while increasing the other spaces. This relationship here, it seems like there's more space between Jessica and graphic designer on the back of the card than there is on the front. Make sure you maintain this composition moving to the back of the card, and then you can start assembling your other type. Okay, now let's talk about layout for the back of the card. Now, you're center aligned, okay? And you're center aligned in the back. Now, as we know from our studies in basic visual communication, that center alignment creates what? It creates symmetry around the counter space or negative space surrounding the center aligned type. And what do we know about symmetry as designers? Symmetry is very boring. It doesn't activate the negative space. It creates a very static layout. It's not a very dynamic layout. So you can create more excitement by going to an alternative, some other layout other than straight center align. Keep that in mind. As far as your type here goes, I think you're looking pretty good. Now, one thing I would recommend here is you've got your telephone, your address, and your email. But as a graphic designer, there's a couple of things here. There's some really big consideration. We're in a visual field, so it would be nice for the person who has your business card to be able to take a quick look at your work. For this reason, I recommend including a website and any kind of social media contacts that you have. Social media meaning your professional social media, not your Facebook page. If you have a professional graphic designer Facebook page, by all means, but don't use your personal social media on your professional business cards. Okay, just want to talk a little bit about layout here. Okay, right here, we've got this kind of cream color. Then we've got the blue background, which I think is a really classy combination, but the white is just too stark. I think the white advances in the composition a little bit too much, kind of creating a separation between the type and the background. And that's a situation I think that you don't want to be in. And then over here in the back, this just really, really stark on this stark white background. As far as color goes, I would recommend this. See that kind of cream color you're using there? Use it for your type. Use it right there in your type. Then on the back, use it for the color of the background. Okay, so that way you've got good color consistency between the front and the back. You've got good typographic consistency between the front and the back, which really leaves the only thing is spacing between letters on the front of the card and the general typographic composition here. And then your color usage, the two font, the Cap J, Cap V, and then compiling this into a format where we can look at both pages at the same time. Add your social media, and then think about maybe a different layout other than center align. Now, that's not required, so you can stay with center align. Just understand that it's a very static layout. It's not very dynamic as center align goes. Also, make sure you print this out and take a look at it, because this area right here is going to be very, very small as you've got this wide, wide border on the card itself. Okay, so other than that, I think it's a really fantastic start. Very straightforward, very easy to read, very easy to digest, and very easy to understand. So most of the heavy lifting is done. Right now, we just have to do some fine tuning. All right, Jessica, thank you very much. If you have any questions at all, please let me know.